Have you ever looked at the high median salaries in states like California or Hawaii and thought, that's the dream? You see the six-figure numbers, the beautiful scenery, the vibrant economy, and you imagine a life of comfort and prosperity. Today, we're going to look behind those numbers. We're going to prove to you with hard data why for millions of working Americans, that high salary isn't a dream. It's a carefully disguised trap. This isn't just another list of states that are bad to live in. This is a list of states running a flawed economic model. A model where an economy built on tourism systematically devalues your paycheck, leaving you working harder just to stay afloat. This phenomenon is called tourism-driven inflation, and it's a powerful, often invisible force that silently drains the wealth from the very people who call these beautiful places home. It operates on three core principles. First, there's the housing squeeze. When investors and corporations buy up properties to turn them into short-term vacation rentals, the local housing supply for actual residents vanishes. Prices for both renting and buying skyrocket, creating a housing bubble that local wages can never hope to match. Second, you have the service cost surge. Everyday essentials from a gallon of milk to a simple car repair become more expensive. Businesses raise their prices to capitalize on the deep pockets of tourists, and residents are forced to pay a tourist tax on their daily existence. And third, the most deceptive of all, is the invisible tax. This is the cost of maintaining infrastructure that is constantly strained by millions of visitors. The roads, the sewers, the power grids, they all suffer. And the bill for these repairs and expansions doesn't go to the tourists. It lands squarely on the property tax bills of the local residents. Today, we are counting down the top 10 states where this economic trap is most severe. These are the places where the promise of a high salary is a lie, eroded daily by the hidden costs of living in paradise. Let's begin the analysis. Number 10, South Carolina. For the visitor, South Carolina is the picture of idyllic Southern life. It's the cobblestone streets of Charleston, the warm sands of Myrtle Beach, the manicured golf courses of Hilton Head. It's a postcard of history and relaxation. But for the resident, that postcard comes with a price tag that's becoming impossible to pay. The core of the problem here is a massive disconnect between the cost of living and the wages offered by the very industry the state depends on: hospitality. According to the self-sufficiency standard for South Carolina, a single adult living in Charleston County needs to earn at least $20.72 an hour just to cover basic necessities without any public or private assistance. Now consider that the federal minimum wage, which applies in South Carolina, is still just $7.25 an hour. The very jobs that support the state's billion-dollar tourism industry, the hotel staff, the restaurant workers, the tour guides, often pay wages that are nowhere near a self-sufficient level. This creates a permanent working-class squeeze. People are serving five-star meals while struggling to afford their own groceries. This financial pressure is compounded by the invisible tax. Coastal infrastructure in places like Myrtle Beach wasn't designed for the constant influx of millions of tourists. The roads are congested, the sewer systems are at capacity, and the wear and tear is immense. The cost to maintain and upgrade these systems is funded by local taxes, meaning residents are subsidizing the impact of the visitors. Meanwhile, inland communities that don't see tourist dollars often see their own public services neglected. It's a classic case of prioritizing the facade over the foundation. Imagine being a hotel worker in Myrtle Beach. You spend your day ensuring guests have a perfect vacation, but after your shift, you face a 1-hour commute back to a small apartment you can barely afford because housing near your job has been priced out by vacation rentals and second homes. You are living the consequences of an economy that values a visitor's comfort over a resident's stability. That is the hidden cost of Southern charm. Number 9, Louisiana. To the outside world, Louisiana's economy runs on culture. It's Mardi Gras, the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, the vibrant culinary scene of the French Quarter. This cultural machine generates billions of dollars. But for the people who are the keepers of that culture, the economic benefits are often an illusion. The hard truth is that Louisiana showcases one of the most glaring paradoxes in the country. According to the Louisiana Travel Association, the tourism industry generates a staggering $2 billion in state and local tax revenue annually. In theory, that's enough money to pay the salaries of over 40,000 public school teachers. Yet year after year, U.S. News& and World Report ranks Louisiana at the bottom of the nation for public services. It currently sits at number 49 for healthcare and number 48 for education. So the critical question is, where is the money going? The reality is that a significant portion of that tourism revenue is reinvested into the tourism machine itself, maintaining the historic districts that tourists visit, funding the massive security and cleanup operations for festivals like Mardi Gras, and marketing the state to attract even more visitors. The local communities, the schools, the hospitals, they are often left with the scraps. This creates a dangerous dependency on a low-wage, seasonal labor market. The jobs in tourism are notoriously unstable. When a festival ends or a hurricane hits or a pandemic occurs, thousands are left without income overnight. This isn't a foundation for a stable, thriving middle class. It's a recipe for economic precarity. Consider the story of a local musician in New Orleans. Her music is the soul of the city, the very thing tourists fly thousands of miles to experience. Yet she lives in a crumbling apartment, works 2 side jobs to make rent, and watches as the public school her child attends has its budget cut again. She is living in a city that sells her culture to the world but fails to invest in her future. In Louisiana, culture has become a commodity, and the residents are paying the price for its export. Number 8. Alaska. Alaska is sold as America's last frontier, a land of untamed wilderness, majestic glaciers, and rugged individualism. Tourists arrive on massive cruise ships, spend a few hours in quaint port towns, and leave with photos of a pristine landscape. They experience the romance of the frontier, but they leave the bill behind for the residents. The economic trap in Alaska is one of scale and isolation. The state's small, remote communities are forced to bear a financial burden completely out of proportion to their size. The numbers are stark. According to the Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development, the overall cost of living in Alaska is 33% higher than the national average. In port towns that cater to cruise ships, it's even more extreme. Juneau is 27% more expensive than the average American city, and a place like Unalaska is a staggering 54% higher. A gallon of milk or a loaf of bread can cost double what it would in Seattle due to the immense shipping costs. This high cost of living is a constant pressure on the year-round population. But the real economic absurdity is the invisible tax of infrastructure. These small towns with populations of only a few thousand are forced to build and maintain airports, docks, and waste management systems capable of handling a sudden influx of 10,000 to 20,000 people from cruise ships in a single day. For 3 to 4 months a year, this infrastructure is pushed to its breaking point. For the other 8 months, it sits largely unused, a massive, depreciating asset that local taxpayers must continue to fund. It's like a small family being forced to maintain a 20-bedroom mansion that is only occupied for the summer. Imagine you're a small business owner in Skagway. During the summer, you're overwhelmed. Your costs for supplies are inflated due to tourist season demand, and finding reliable staff is nearly impossible because there's no affordable housing for them. Then the last cruise ship of the season pulls away. Suddenly, your revenue drops by 90%. You spend the long, dark winter months just trying to break even, all while paying property taxes that support an infrastructure built not for you, but for the fleeting summer crowds. This is the economic reality of the Alaskan frontier, a boom and bust cycle dictated by tourism, where the locals are left to carry the financial weight of the bust. Number 7. California. California has long been the symbol of the American dream. The promise of a high-paying job, perfect weather, and endless opportunity has lured millions. But for those who live there now, that dream has become a gilded cage, a beautiful prison of high costs where even a 6-figure salary can feel like a vow of poverty. The problem is no longer just a challenge. It is a full-blown crisis, and its epicenter is housing. The numbers from the California Association of Realtors are simply devastating. As of the second quarter of 2025, the minimum annual income required to qualify for the purchase of a median-priced home in California is over $220,000. Let that sink in. You can be in the top 10% of earners in the entire country and still not be able to afford an average home in the Golden State. But the most alarming statistic is this. The monthly payment for that median-priced home, including mortgage, taxes, and insurance, has skyrocketed by 82% since the beginning of 2020. Your salary has not increased by 82% in 4 years. This isn't just inflation. This is a systemic breakdown of affordability. And tourism is a primary accelerant of this fire. In desirable coastal communities from San Diego to Santa Cruz, the explosion of short-term rentals on platforms like Airbnb has removed tens of thousands of homes from the long-term rental market. This artificial scarcity drives up rents for everyone, forcing residents into brutal bidding wars for what little is left. The result is a mass exodus of the middle class. The teachers, the nurses, the firefighters, the very backbone of any functional society, can no longer afford to live in the communities they serve. School districts are facing critical teacher shortages, not because of a lack of qualified candidates, but because those candidates cannot find a place to live on a teacher's salary. Think about a young couple, both software engineers at a major tech company in Silicon Valley. Their combined household income is $300,000 a year, a figure that would place them in the top 5% of American households. Yet they are living in a two-bedroom apartment, watching over half their take-home pay disappear into rent, with the dream of home ownership being a distant mathematical impossibility. They are trapped in the gilded cage, earning a fortune on paper but unable to build real wealth or put down roots. That is the grim reality of the California dream in 2025. Number 6. Washington. For decades, Washington State, much like California, was seen as a beacon of opportunity, blending stunning natural beauty with a booming tech economy. Seattle, the Emerald City, became a magnet for ambitious professionals. But the very success that built the city is now making it unlivable for all but the highest earners, creating a severe affordability crisis that is spreading across the state. The economic pressure point in Washington is the collision of high-tech salaries with an insufficient housing supply, exacerbated by the state's popularity as a tourist destination. The numbers paint a clear picture of this squeeze. The median home price in Seattle has now climbed to $900,000. While the average software engineer at a company like Amazon might earn over $227,000 a year, that salary is quickly consumed. For a young family, the costs are crushing. According to apartmentcleaningseattle.com, the average annual cost of childcare in the city is $1,500 per child. After taxes, housing, and childcare, even a hefty tech salary begins to look thin. But the most insidious effect is what economists call the ripple effect. The intense housing pressure in Seattle doesn't stay contained. It radiates outwards, transforming once affordable neighboring cities like Tacoma and Bellevue into expensive suburbs. Families are pushed further and further away from job centers, leading to grueling, multi-hour daily commutes. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a massive unpaid time tax on the working population. The tourism industry adds another layer of pressure. The Seattle waterfront and areas around Pike Place Market are major tourist hubs, but they also sit on prime real estate. The constant demand from tourism keeps commercial and residential property values artificially high. Furthermore, the cruise ship industry, a major economic driver, funnels hundreds of thousands of visitors through the city each summer, putting immense strain on public transit and infrastructure, a cost that is ultimately borne by local taxpayers. Consider the story of a software developer at Microsoft. She and her partner, a graphic designer, earn a combined income that puts them well into the upper middle class. But to afford a home where they can raise their child, they are forced to live in a community nearly 2 hours outside of Seattle. Their days are bookended by frustrating traffic. They are living the paradox of Washington's economy, professionally successful, yet personally strained by the very prosperity they help create. They have the job, but the cost of living has stolen their quality of life. Number 5. Arizona. Arizona has always been sold as the desert dream, a place of endless sunshine, stunning landscapes like the Grand Canyon and Sedona, and an affordable retirement haven. But that dream is drying up, both literally and financially. The state is facing a severe economic trap where the cost of the most essential resource of all, water, is beginning to cripple the budgets of its residents. In Arizona, the economic burden isn't just about housing. It's about the rising cost of basic utilities, driven by a perfect storm of climate change, rapid population growth, and the immense demands of the tourism industry. The numbers are alarming. In tourism-heavy Sedona, residents are now facing a 45% increase in their water bills, a direct result of the strain on the local water supply. Across the state, the largest utility provider, APS, is pushing for a 14% rate hike to fund necessary upgrades to a power grid that is struggling under the demand from new residents, new data centers, and the countless resorts and golf courses that cater to tourists. This is the invisible tax in its purest form. A tourist visiting a Scottsdale resort might spend a week enjoying lush, green golf courses in the middle of the desert without a second thought. But the immense amount of water required to maintain that artificial oasis is a cost passed directly to the permanent residents in the form of higher utility bills and stricter water conservation mandates. The locals are essentially subsidizing a non-sustainable fantasy for visitors. This problem is compounded by the housing market. In towns bordering national parks and tourist hotspots, short-term rentals have squeezed the market, pushing property values to unsustainable heights. A home that was once an affordable option for a local family is now an Airbnb generating thousands of dollars a month for an out-of-state investor. Imagine a retired couple who moved to Phoenix a decade ago, drawn by the promise of an affordable life in the sun. They live on a fixed income. But over the last 5 years, they've watched their combined utility bills for water and electricity double. The rising costs are eating away at their retirement savings, forcing them to make difficult choices between running their air conditioning in the brutal summer heat and affording their medication. The desert dream has become a financial nightmare as the true cost of living in an arid, overstrained environment comes due. Number 4. Colorado. Colorado's brand is Rocky Mountain High. It's a promise of crisp mountain air, world-class skiing, and a healthy, active lifestyle. This brand has been incredibly successful, attracting millions of tourists and new residents. But this success has created a deeply fractured, two-tiered economy that is crushing the very people who make the state run. The economic model in Colorado's famous mountain towns is fundamentally broken. It's an economy of the super rich and the service workers who cater to them, with a middle class that is being systematically erased. The data from the MIT Living Wage Calculator reveals the stark reality. A single adult in Colorado needs to earn, on average, $44,478 a year after taxes just to make ends meet. Now compare that to the average salary for a worker in the food service industry, a cornerstone of the tourism economy. Their average salary is just $39,950 a year before taxes. The gap is not just a gap, it's a chasm. In resort towns like Vail or Aspen, this disparity reaches absurd levels. The median home price can exceed $3 million, while the jobs available are primarily in hospitality, paying little more than minimum wage. This has led to a phenomenon some call the disappearing community. The teachers, firefighters, police officers, and healthcare workers essential for any town to function can no longer afford to live there. They are forced into super commutes of 2 to 3 hours each way from more affordable areas, leading to severe staffing shortages in critical public services. Some towns have become little more than hollowed-out playgrounds for the wealthy, with a transient workforce that has no connection or investment in the local community. The story of a hospital in one of these ski towns illustrates the crisis perfectly. They have a state-of-the-art medical facility, but they cannot retain nurses. The reason? A nurse's salary, while respectable elsewhere, is not enough to compete in a real estate market dominated by multi-million-dollar vacation homes. The hospital has been forced to take the drastic step of buying its own apartment buildings to provide subsidized housing, simply to attract and keep the essential staff they need to operate. When a hospital has to become a landlord to function, it is a clear sign that the local economy has failed its own people. In Colorado, many are discovering that the Rocky Mountain High comes with a cost of living that is even higher. Number 3. Tennessee. Tennessee has become an unexpected tourism giant. The appeal of Nashville's music scene combined with the natural beauty of the Great Smoky Mountains has created a powerful economic engine. But that engine is spewing a thick financial smog over the state's housing market, pushing out long-term residents in favor of weekend tourists. The primary driver of Tennessee's economic trap is the unchecked explosion of the short-term rental market. In cities like Nashville and the tourist towns surrounding the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, like Gatlinburg and Sevierville, entire neighborhoods have been transformed into de facto hotels. The data from AirDNA, a firm that tracks the short-term rental market, is revealing. A staggering 44% of all Airbnb listings in Nashville are for properties that can accommodate 8 or more guests. These are not people renting out a spare room. These are entire family homes that have been pulled from the local housing market and converted into businesses catering to bachelor parties and large tourist groups. This has had a devastating effect on housing affordability. As thousands of properties are removed from the long-term rental pool, the remaining supply becomes subject to intense competition, driving up prices for everyone. The dream of an affordable Southern lifestyle is quickly evaporating. This creates a dangerous economic dependency. The state's economy, particularly in the eastern counties, is now overwhelmingly reliant on tourism revenue. Local governments, hungry for tax dollars, have often encouraged the development of more cabins, more attractions, and more hotels. But this creates a fragile economic bubble. When a disruption occurs, a recession that curbs travel spending, or a natural disaster like the wildfires that have ravaged the area, the entire local economy is at risk of collapse, as there is little economic diversity to fall back on. Think of the young musician who moved to Nashville to pursue her dream. For years, she lived in a modest apartment in a neighborhood like East Nashville, a place with character and a sense of community. But over the past few years, she's watched as her neighbors have been replaced one by one. The homes around her were bought by investors, gutted, and turned into sterile, high-priced Airbnbs. Then one day she receives a notice. Her building has been sold and she has 60 days to move out. Her home is about to become another short-term rental. She is being pushed out of the very city whose musical soul she contributes to, a victim of an economy that now prioritizes a 3-day visit over a lifetime resident. Number 2. Hawaii. There is perhaps no place on earth more synonymous with paradise than Hawaii. The islands are a global symbol of beauty, tranquility, and the aloha spirit. But for the people who live there, especially native Hawaiians, this paradise is being systematically sold off, piece by piece, creating an economic reality that is nothing short of a tragedy. Hawaii is the most extreme example of tourism-driven inflation in the United States. The cost of living is not just high, it is punitive. The state suffers from what locals call the paradise tax, the exorbitant price of shipping nearly every single commodity across 2,500 miles of ocean. But the real crisis is amplified by an economy completely distorted by tourism. The official data from the Missouri Economic Research and Information Center, or MERIC, quantifies this crisis. On their cost of living index, where the national average is a baseline of 100, Hawaii scores an overwhelming 189.9. That means the cost of living is nearly 90% higher than the rest of the country. The housing index is the most shocking figure of all, 312.8. Housing costs in Hawaii are more than 3 times the national average. This economic pressure has created a slow-motion cultural erosion. The very land that has been in families for generations is becoming too expensive to keep. As property values are driven up by foreign investors and the luxury tourism market, property taxes become an unbearable burden for local families living on local wages. They are forced to sell their ancestral lands, often to developers who will build another resort or another gated community for the wealthy. This isn't just an economic transaction. It's the severing of a deep cultural and spiritual connection to the land. The story of a multi-generational family on Maui is a heartbreakingly common one. They have lived on the same plot of land for over a century. It's where their grandparents are buried. It's where they have farmed and fished and maintained their cultural traditions. But the property taxes on their land, which is now considered prime real estate due to its proximity to a new luxury resort, have surpassed their entire annual income. They are faced with an impossible choice: go into debt to keep their ancestral home, or sell it and leave the island, becoming exiles from their own homeland. For many, Las Vegas has ironically become the ninth island of Hawaii, a place where displaced locals move in search of the affordable life they can no longer find in their own paradise. This is the devastating cost of selling paradise. The people who are its heart and soul are the ones who can no longer afford to live there. Number 1. Florida. And finally, we arrive at number 1, the state that has taken all the economic pressures we've discussed: the housing crisis, the low-wage service economy, the strained infrastructure, and added a devastating new ingredient that makes it the most financially perilous place to live in America. That state is Florida. For decades, Florida was the go-to destination for affordable living and retirement in the sun. Tourists flocked to its theme parks and beaches, and the state's economy boomed. But today, the Sunshine State is the epicenter of a perfect economic storm, and the key factor is the collapse of its insurance market. The other states on this list face a housing affordability crisis. Florida faces a housing uninsurability crisis. Due to increasing climate risks, particularly from hurricanes, major insurance companies have either gone bankrupt or have pulled out of the state entirely. This has left homeowners with a shrinking pool of insurers who are charging astronomical rates. The numbers are catastrophic. According to the insurance marketplace Insurify, the average cost of homeowners insurance in Florida is projected to hit an unthinkable $1,460 per year by the end of 2025. This is a 9% increase in just 1 year, and it's nearly 10 times the national average. This creates what we call a double bubble. On one hand, you have the tourism-driven housing bubble. The demand for vacation homes and short-term rentals in places like Miami and Orlando has driven property prices to record highs. On the other hand, you have the insurance bubble, where the cost to simply protect that property is becoming unaffordable. A high salary is completely neutralized by this double-barreled financial assault. Your income may be high, but if your insurance and property tax payments consume 40 to 50% of your mortgage payment, you are not building wealth. You are simply treading water in an increasingly expensive and risky location. Let's consider the ultimate Florida story. A couple from the Northeast sells their home and retires to what they believe will be a more affordable life near the coast. They buy their dream home, then they go to get it insured. They are shocked to find that the annual insurance premium is higher than their monthly mortgage payment was back home. Their retirement budget is shattered before they even unpack. They are now trapped. They can't afford the insurance, but without insurance, they can't get a mortgage, and selling the property becomes incredibly difficult. This is the perfect storm. It's a combination of all the economic traps we've seen, amplified by a climate and insurance crisis that has no easy solution. In Florida, the sunshine is free, but everything else could cost you your entire financial future. So there you have it. From the charming coasts of South Carolina to the insurance minefield of Florida, a clear pattern emerges. The issue isn't tourism itself, but a flawed economic model that prioritizes the short-term revenue from visitors over the long-term financial stability of its residents. These states have built their prosperity on a foundation that is actively eroding the purchasing power of their own citizens. The high salary you see advertised is often just an illusion, a number on a page that is relentlessly consumed by the hidden costs of housing, services, and invisible taxes. The dream they sell is beautiful, but the economic reality can be a nightmare. For those of you living in these states, which hidden cost impacts you the most? Housing, taxes, or daily expenses? And which state do you believe will be the next to fall into this economic trap? Let us know in the comments below. Now that you understand the states where a high salary is an illusion, it's crucial to see how this trap is now appearing in specific cities you might be considering for retirement. Click the video on your screen to watch our investigation into the top 5 cities that are becoming retirement traps.